So we're going to go into segment 3, and our friend Cynthia McDonald is going to take us in.
Awesome. So, this particular article that we're going to be discussing is entitled Humanist Women of Color Gather. It was actually written in The Humanist by Anna Clay and published on October 6, 2022. And this actually was a synopsis of the Women of Color Beyond Belief conference that happened in my city, Chicago, Illinois, actually put on by the Black Non-Believers, the Black Skeptic Group, and the organizers and founders were Bridget Bria Crutchfield, Dr. Sakibu Hutchinson, and friend of the show, Mandisa Thomas, the founder and also the current president of the Black Non-Believers. So, in this particular article, it mostly just discussed like some of the highlights of the conference. Actually mentioned like some of the different segments that actually was going on. The theme of this particular year's conference was called Hands Off Our Bodies, which is a proclamation, a demand, and a movement that is of the utmost importance in the wake of the SCOTUS overturning of Roe v. Wade decision that actually negatively impacts Black women, Indigenous women, and other women from marginalized communities, and at disproportionate rates. So a lot of particular panel discussions and also speeches that were presented were around that particular theme in some shape, way, or form. So I am going to go ahead and pass it on to Kelley, who I know that you had like a few questions, preguntas rather, concerning the
Yeah,
conference.
there wasn't a whole lot of information in there, but I know that you served on one of the panels there, did you not?
I did. I was a
Yeah.
panelist at the Women of Color Beyond Belief conference. I was actually on a panel with Mandisa Thomas and Jenna Mew, a fellow alumni of the nonprofits and the ACA Discord. And our particular panel was discussing women of color, Black women that happen to be in the atheist content podcast world, and some of the advantages and some of the barriers that we actually face as content creators. So we really got a chance to kind of like dig in a little bit, even though like our panel I believe was like only about an hour, including Q&A. About all the different things that we actually deal with creating content, especially when you're doing it from a non-belief perspective. I know that specifically one of the things that I brought up is just like the whole notion about being heard. Like, especially as we can all tell that I am the resident woman of color, Black woman on this whole panel of two bald white guys and one white guy with long hair. So, which as we can say, especially when it comes to atheist content, like a lot of times it is largely white cisgender heterosexual men, cis het men, right? So try to like kind of like get through that and actually say like, hey, we have a perspective when it comes to atheists, and we also have a perspective when it comes to being atheists from our particular communities, which can be very different
Hmm.
in some cases from the communities that happen to be present in this particular time.
Yeah, Kelley, any
So
more specific questions?
I wanted to say that I kind of envy you getting to hang out with Jenna Miu. I haven't talked to her in a long time, and she used to do another podcast called If Was, and
Mhm.
that's kind of where I started out doing this whole internet thing. So it's all her fault, and I really miss her a lot. So
Yeah,
I'm
I
kind of
remember.
envious.
I remember a while ago. I mean, it's going on over a year ago now. It's maybe even like closer to 2 years when things have come on a long way from in the women of color atheist movement, and it's thanks to people like Cynthia and Mandisa and Jenna as to why that's happening. And it's great to me to see these conferences go. And like I say, I remember almost a couple of years ago when Jenna and Cynthia did a video, and I ended up in an argument in the comments. I don't know if you remember this, Cynthia, and because someone was basically saying, "Why do black women need a voice?"
Yeah.
And it's very rare I get into YouTube comment arguments, but this was an occasion where I really, really got fired up. This is something that is not only welcome, but is vitally needed. And I, for one, am loving seeing this grow every year when I see this conference, advertised, and I see the speakers there and the range of topics. It really, really excites me that this is happening and this is growing. And let's have more of it, Jason.
Yeah.
Well, the thing, Cynthia, that really stood out to me reading the article, and if you could talk about this, was the amount of intersectionality that I saw being represented there, especially with queer folk, with different people who more or less experience the damage that you get from misogynistic, patriarchal, cis, het, white male culture. Would you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I found like was so dope about this particular conference is that we had presenters who were not only like, from their perspective communities, whether they were Black, whether they were Latina, whether they were indigenous, whether they were Indian, East Indian, and had all types of different representations from these particular groups of people. But we also saw like very much so a representation of queer people as well.
Yeah.
Specifically, Deanna Williams, who I got a chance to meet at the conference, is a filmmaker. She presented her film called Tracks. I even bought it. As it's available on DVD and also streaming, people. So make sure you go ahead and get it. But that really just talks about like her experiences in a comical way about being a queer person, who happens to also be Black, and how that even shows up in her particular community, and and also even Candace Gorham, who also talked about death and dying and disbelief and how that even intersects in that particular way, who also is a queer woman, queer Black woman. And especially I think that like when we're having these particular conversations about community alone, we have a tendency to kind of like only emphasize like race and ethnicity, right?
Yeah.
Which is important. But the thing about it is that although like, yes, my race is Black, my ethnicity may be, African American, as far as like, descendant of chattel slavery, Friedman, as far as like a political status is concerned, I still have an intersection of like who I am as an individual. It's not just, it doesn't just stop there.
Exactly.
I am an atheist. I am a guardian. I have a child. I'm also an ally of the LGBTQ plus community. I work with people in healthcare. I'm an advocate, like, so like all these different when it comes to identities converge to make a person. And I think that like sometimes that gets lost in the sauce. When we are actually talking about like, what, makes up a person, like, oh, I just see Black. Like, no, I'm much more than that, Yeah.
Oh yeah. I fully agree. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
Kelley, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I do have one more question. I really thought this looked like a really interesting, insightful, really informative event, and I'd like to see in this happening, but I'd also like to see more things happening in Chicago, since there does seem to be this vibrant community down there. But Cynthia, you were able to attend this conference for the 3 years that it's been running. Have you seen a larger participation and more excitement over the event, about the event, as time has gone on?
Well, I actually attended and participated in 2021 and 2022. So its first inception was in 2019. I believe that at the height of the pandemic, they had to do like a kibosh on it, and then came back in 2021. So I participated in the past 2 years of this particular conference, and I have seen growth. I have definitely seen more people that are interested, and especially bringing their perspectives to, really create community, which is really what Black non-believers is very much so about. A big part of their atheist activism and non-belief activism is actually creating a safe space for Black people and also allies who happen to be non-believers. Um, Especially like, and Richard, shout out to you for, combat, jumping in the comments when people are like, why do Black women who happen to be atheists need a voice? First off, my question is, really? Secondly, it's, this our communities have been silenced for so long when it comes to a plethora of issues, right? But being able to have a platform to not only talk about some of the work that we do, talk about our activism, because like that's one of the things that I was able to do in 2021, talk about specifically the activism that I do about social and economic justice, specifically around reparations. But and then coming back to talk about how I use media in order to like actually bolster that particular issue and other issues that like affect women, and Black women, and also other women who happen to be marginalized. That is a point to be able to give voice and also shine a light on these particular issues, because a lot of times they get blinded eyed. And that's why it's important to really be able to promote, support, and be able to be involved in this particular conference.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is really, really awesome. I think, like I said earlier, I think I've seen this grow. I've seen from the outside. I've seen this
Yeah.
grow, and it's something I've had my eye on for a couple of years since, my friends Jenna and Cynthia have been involved, and I like to keep a close beady eye on what they're doing.
Y'all,
Not a creepy beady eye, just
no, just
a
all
beady
y'all
eye.
just need to come to Chicago and quit playing, and then you all have to indulge in Chicago style pizza so we can tell Mandisa to shut up, because we've been fighting for the past 2 years over New York style Chicago style pizza. Yes, I'm gunning for you, Mandisa. I love you, but you're wrong.
Yeah,
New York style
you
pizza is
touched on
shitty.
something.
Just want to
You
tell you
touched on something very important earlier, Cynthia, and that was and one of the reasons why I kind of got into that argument I did all that time ago is that because this isn't, it's very easy just to see this as a Black woman thing,
right.
and it's not.
No, yeah,
Because
no.
there's so much intersection in that community itself. It's women of color aren't just Black women. There are other people in there as well. Like you said, with the Native American women and people like that, and people who are queer. We've got to represent that, give them their voices, because they're marginalized. They're marginalized within a marginalized community.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And this is why it's so important to have these events, so that everybody has a fair crack at the whip when they get their voice going. Kelley.
I was just going to say there's 3 levels of marginalization there, right?
Yeah, it's race,
Right?
it's
There's
gender,
the
and
right
also
race, gender, and atheism,
and
right? So there's
atheism.
3
Yeah,
levels of marginalization.
yeah,
Yeah. Add
yeah,
sexual
Yeah,
preference
big
into the
fight.
mix, and
and also and sexual
Yeah.
preference, and not
come
just
on,
sexual preference, but it also
Oh,
comes with gender identification as
identity,
well.
yes, of course. I mean,
Mhm.
5
Yeah.
things, and then socioeconomic status. What the? I mean, yeah, there's so many things you can throw in the mix, and I really think it's beautiful that you brought up, Cynthia, how you've got 2 shaved head white guys right here, and on the other side, long haired white guy. But you see, there's an intersection here, It's
Hmm.
because of the atheism and because of the skepticism. So I mean, we're all in the same boat together. We need to keep it going.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can, and and I just want to just bring up this one more thing, and then we can definitely move on. Is that it's so important to have these particular spaces, because there's going to be something that's very much so indicative to your community alone, especially when we're talking about like that ethnocentric portion of
Hmm.
it. We need our spaces. We do need spaces for us to identify, grow, and becoming a whole person, right?
Hmm.
But we can still be able to coalesce with one another, as far as like bringing together issues that all of us can actually say that concern us. Like we all are concerned about the blurring of religion and government.
Hmm.
We
There you
are
go.
also concerned about government in of itself dictating bodily autonomy,
Hmm.
because it's not just reproductive rights. It's really also about what the government can say can and cannot happen with your body without your consent. And it's also about being able to be a non-believer without necessarily getting the backlash of what
Hmm.
comes with that. And especially like and I can speak specifically in the Black community, because I brought this up so many times, that being Christian and being Black are almost synonymous, you know.
Oh yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah, so it's so important to be able to have spaces to say, hey, I know this is who you are, but you can be a non-believer, and it does not have to do anything, or it does not have to take away from your identity as a person.
Yeah.
no,
Amen.
very, very, very important message. And like I say, it's something I want to see more of and grow in the future.